Hello, my name is Jamie Higginbotham. I am the principal video engineer over at SpaceX. I'm the executive producer and founder of a little web show called Tomorrow, and I am transitioning from male to female. But chances are, if you're here, you already knew all of that already. To start, I think it's mostly just all of the wonderful people over at Tomorrow, the community of Tomorrow that's really interested in the science and engineering that's going into me right now. And I thought it was important to leave Tomorrow as a space-only channel and then move any transition-based stuff over here. So if you'd like to get updates on everything that I'm doing in my life, I will work on moving AMAs here. I will work on giving you kind of some interesting updates with how electrolysis works, why I chose galvanic electrolysis over thermolysis or blend electrolysis, all of the fun jazz that I have to go through, the incredibly painful procedures that I have been going through. All of that will be located here and not on the main Tomorrow channel. If you're just joining and you have no idea who I am, don't worry, I'll get an intro video a little bit later on. To start off the channel, I thought it would be interesting to post a podcast that I was on fairly recently. So this podcast was just released, but I actually recorded it with a good friend of mine, Kyle Schember, June of 2019. So it was only 2 months after I came out as transgender, and last year. A lot has changed since then, but what's interesting is a lot also has not changed since then. So it will be fun if I get to go back June of 2020 to see what that delta is. And since I'm putting all of this on my channel now, Kyle did say that I could actually bring the camera in and we could get a video session of it too. So I think that'll be a little more interesting. But for this one, you're just gonna get a logo because it was really only an audio podcast. Now, if you're interested in these types of stories and you want to hear more than just my personal story, Kyle's working on this whole thing. It's called transstory.net, and you can go over to that website. He's got a whole podcast on all of this because all of our experiences are completely different. And so hearing these different stories, you might learn something new. All right, without further ado, here's the first episode of Trans Story.
Trans Story is an episodic podcast where each episode features an individual story from the transgender community. Season 1, I sit down with my friends of friends, and people in my social circles that I've gotten to know over the years to really sit down, have a heart-to-heart one-on-one, and discuss what it means to be transgender, what that experience is like, with the intent to hopefully inspire and educate others so that we can all be better humans. Today's guest is my dear friend Jamie, and Jamie and I, we've known each other
over 10 years?
For years. It's too many years. After a certain point, you just stop counting. Thank you for being here today. It's very fitting that you're the first guest on the first episode of Trans Story, because you were largely in part of the inspiration of me deciding to do this. And it was sort of a reflection that I did where I was like, gosh, I have a lot of trans friends and I have a lot of people that I know that have gone through this, yet I'm probably just like anybody else who doesn't fully understand it. And
me too.
Yeah, well, exactly. But the purpose of this whole thing was to hopefully have a dialogue and conversation with people. Season 1, whatever you want to call it, is people that I know, like people that have come out to me, and in some cases the first person they told, or an early person that they told. And that's kind of honor. I consider that an honor because it means that someone trusts you enough to kind of share a very new experience, or sort of something that, and we'll get into that a bit. Where I thought we would start would be sort of your coming out story to me, because you picked
the worst possible day.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize what I had done to you.
Yeah, right.
And it was hilarious.
For those of you just tuning in and listening, I've known formerly Ben and now Jamie for multiple years. And I got a text message. And do you remember what it said exactly?
No, probably something along the lines of, just so you know, I'm transitioning to female, or something along those lines.
Well, it was like, this is something I don't really want everyone to know yet.
Yeah. You were in my talk, so you were talking about how some of your friends came out to you first. You weren't first, but you were in like I couldn't count on one hand the number of people that I had told just yet.
It's the inner circle.
So yeah, you were in the inner circle, and we were already texting with unrelated stuff.
Right.
And as we were finishing up, I was like, you know what? yeah, this is something that you could like help me with because you're that type of person. And so I was like, hey, just so you know, I was born the wrong gender and I'm going to transition to female.
Right.
But that's not the whole story. So Kyle,
well, I should say before you give it away, what I did is you were like, please don't tell anybody. If you want to tell Ryan, that's fine. Mm-hmm. And I kind of, and Ryan and I were not together. He was somewhere else, and so I called him later, and I was like, I got this text from Ben, and I was like, and it said that he's going to transition, and we started talking, and he goes, he's like, Kyle, it's April 1st. And I was like, son of a bitch. He got me. He got me so good. And I was like, oh, yeah, well, I'll get him. So we were just kind of riled up because he pointed out that it was April 1st. And so I texted you the next day and I was like, happy April 2nd.
And I was like, yep, still a thing. I didn't realize what date it was. It was just a thing that I wanted to tell you. And it was like, that was the moment. And then you didn't come back with anything that was bad or inappropriate. It was just our normal conversations.
I was like, all right, I'm supporting.
Yeah, and then the next day I realized what had happened, and I was just like, oh, by the way, this really is a thing. This is really happening. And you were like, I really thought that was an April Fool's joke.
All right then, because you're a prankster.
Sometimes
a prankster, and it's not out of character that you would plot and plan something like that.
Maybe that isn't something I don't think I would ever really joke about with like that. Yeah, I do like office pranks, but like something like that, I don't think I would have actually.
But when you at a certain point, you've got to really up your game on an April 1st. And I was like,
I suppose
certainly doing it. But anyway, beyond that, it's still an honor to be considered an inner circle person. And I know it wasn't the first person. And there's a couple other guests of our future guests that there's one in particular that I was absolutely the first person that they told.
I want to hear that story.
And we're going to get into that story in a future episode. But for today, what I wanted to talk about is, we had that, which was our coming out story, your coming out story to me. But what was the catalyst? Like, what was the thing, regardless of the date? Like, what was the sequence of events that sort of brought you to that realization?
It's really hard to answer that question because it's not like I just suddenly figured this out one day. This is something that I struggled with for decades, actually. And I can't pinpoint the exact first moment in time. I can only narrow it down to like a 4-year period, somewhere between it was 1994 and 1998 or so. And that's just based on like fuzzy memories I have of the time and like circumstances and like the first time I started having these thoughts. And at that time, I didn't know there was anything I could do about it. So, and it was, I was almost, I was basically ashamed of it. So I decided to bury it. And I took the idea and I put it in a box in my brain and I locked it away and I forgot about it for years. And every few years it would crop back up. So when someone says, when did you first realize it? It's like, well, I don't know how to answer that because I first realized it multiple times throughout the years. Because every time I would take that box out and open up the box, be like, what's in here? I'm like, oh, put that back.
Suppress it.
Suppress it.
Yeah.
I really was, in a way, figuring out again for the first time. But every time I opened it up, I put a little bit more into the box. And the box was only so big. And eventually, earlier this year, I was like, oh, hey, what's in this box? And so I open it up. I'm like, and I realized I couldn't close the box again. I couldn't forget. So in all previous instances, I really was forgetting it. I was suppressing it. And this time I had lost my ability to do that. And I struggled with that for a while because I just wanted to forget it again, make it go away. It's so much easier if you don't have to deal with it. And so that part, the final part where I had to accept it, that happened this year.
Right.
That was early in the year.
Right.
I don't remember the exact date, but early in the year, we'll call it like January, February kind of thing.
Is there an earliest memory of first thoughts of this or sort of a confusion moment that would, where you would start, do you have anything you can point back to go, oh, it was this age?
Well, I can't say age. I can just say it was
time period.
Yeah, I can say time period. It was between, and the reason I know the time period is because I have like fuzzy memories of, I was in a control room and it had beige walls and that narrowed it down to 2 control rooms that happened over a 4-year period. And that's why I know it's that 4-year period. But I can't remember specifics. I can just remember like
it's weird what I remember, and I don't know why I remember what I remember, but it's like it was beige walls. I was alone with my thoughts for a really long time, and those were two separate control rooms like that in that 4-year period. So I don't remember which one it first occurred in, but definitely mid 90s for me. So
And
I would
that'd
have
be
been
the first parts, and then it just kind of kept popping up.
yeah. Every few years it would pop up, and something would almost always trigger it, right? So. Yeah, like it would pop up. And
What's an example of something that you're like, boop, there it is again?
well, I think the easiest one is I saw someone else transitioning, and I saw what she was going through. Like I saw it from essentially from the beginning, and I started to realize what was going on, and that caused like that memory to pop back out and be like, oh well, and
That's a person you knew.
there's a person I work with, yes,
Right.
In the same office space, like
Right.
cubes away, and so because it was right there, it caused this to kind of pop back out. But the key difference this time, and I think what added to the box preventing it from closing again, was that now I saw there was an option. And prior to that, because I never did any research into this, I never did anything, right? I was just like, okay,
Out of sight, out of mind.
out of sight, out of mind. This isn't anything that I can deal with. I was born male. There's nothing they can do. End of story. I'll just that's it. But once I saw, actually, no, science can change that. I was like, huh. And then I started doing research. I said, okay, well, my mind and my body don't agree with each other. Which one can I fix? Like, can I fix my
Right.
mind? Can I make my mind match what my body is? The answer to that, by the way, is no.
Right.
There are some weird things out there, but none of that's real.
Not recommended.
Not recommended.
Right.
But I did seriously look at that. I'm like, okay, well, I just want these two. All I want is for these two things to match. So which way can I go? So I looked. Can I make my mind match? No, but I can make my body match. And the amount, like, the scientific strides we have made in making that a possibility are incredible. And so that I was kind of excited. But this impacts more than just me. It impacts my circle, everyone around me, my family, my friends, myself. So I wanted to kind of get their input before I made any sort of decisions.
Right. And so you did this, you sort of came to terms with that in your own mind, did some research, and then said, okay, now it's probably time I start to fan this information out. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I feel like we're oversimplifying the coming out to myself part. I mean, that was
because it was a long time.
It took a while. I mean, it wasn't like years. It was certainly more on the like several weeks, nearly a month kind of thing, just for me to accept myself.
Yeah.
Myself. That was hard.
Right.
That was,
I mean, you're a very logical person.
Yeah.
And also, factual based and scientifically based, and these are things that are important to you. And also, you're also the kind of person that really doesn't give a shit what anybody thinks. Ultimately, anyway. So it's interesting that knowing you for so long that's just seem like somebody who just I do not care what you think, and that's your overall demeanor. But yet, here's the biggest one of them all, at least for you internally. Mm-hmm. And now and you obviously are also the person that does your homework.
Well, so and to clarify, if it's something that only impacts me, I don't care what you think.
Right.
But if it's something that impacts all of us around me, then now I care. I care a little bit more. Yeah. It's
That's fair.
Yeah. So that was very difficult. It was like coming out to different people. I was the hardest one.
You were the hardest person.
I was the hardest person to accept it myself. It wasn't something that I wanted. I didn't ask for this. I wanted to turn it off. I wanted to put it back, really, is ultimately what I wanted. No. Well, yeah, that's what I thought I wanted. So let me clarify. I don't think I had the data then that I have now. But at the time, I thought I wanted to put it back.
Right.
Then I'm married. And so the next person that I came out to a few weeks later was my wife.
Right.
And at the time, I hadn't decided if I was going to do anything with it. Now, I knew that I couldn't forget anymore. So I'm going
to be acknowledged.
It's acknowledged. I'm living with this for the rest of my life. Right. I'm living with this knowledge for the rest of my life. Can't forget. But I've lived over 40 years on this planet as a male. I am happy. I'm not unhappy. And just because I have this knowledge doesn't mean that I need to be unhappy. Right. So I can continue to live as a male for the rest of my life, and I'll probably be happy. Or I can choose to transition to female And I don't know what that means, but I'll still probably be happy.
Or
right?
happier.
Or happier, yeah.
Right. You might live to your fullest potential and be the happiest.
Knowing what I know now, the answer is absolutely happier. Right. But and we're only anyhow. So I'm talking with her. I'm basically coming out with her, which is second most terrifying person I've told. Me, number one,
and the person you're married
number two,
to.
And the person I'm married to.
Right.
And we're a partner, we're a team. So her input matters a lot to me.
Yeah.
And so while I don't, to your point, like I don't care what the world thinks because this doesn't impact the world. This impacts us greatly. Yeah. And so what she says matters a lot.
And what did she say?
She was immediately supportful. She was driving too.
You pick these times.
I know. So
you're holding that giant, expensive glass of China. Let me tell you this thing right now as you drop it.
I know. So she's trying to
that filter is missing.
She's trying to drive, and she's trying to not cry, but she's super supportful. And it was in that moment that I realized I absolutely want to transition.
Right.
And there was no doubt in my mind from that moment forward.
I mean, you have the support of your best friend and closest confidant person you. And that's an interesting thing. You've exchanged vows. You've done these things. And you're also a very committed person. Both of you are. Mm-hmm. If you're committed to something, you're committed to it. You're doing it.
Oh, yeah.
Meaning, whatever that is, I'll be the movies at 4. You're there at 4. Oh, yeah. I mean, like, you're a committed person. And that's a very admirable trait. And that's an interesting subject to broach with somebody that you've made certain vows to or certain promises to. And did that even come up, or was it, how did that, I mean, not that that's like you go right to that point, but from then to now, I mean, nothing.
I think the way I worded that was, I'm basically telling you that I'm about to be in breach of contract. I think those were the exact words I used. And she said, I fell in love with the person, and the person isn't changing. And I fundamentally believe that to be true.
That's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's when the dial between do nothing and do something switched to, oh yeah, we're doing something here.
Right.
And and then now I'm at a point where, okay, half of my life on this planet, I've been the wrong gender. So let's move quickly.
Right.
Like, I don't want to waste more time here.
Right.
Let's go as fast as we can.
Decisions made. And so, we immediately contacted a doctor, started hormone replacement therapy like within the week, and have started that journey together. And I check in with her regularly because, data changes, back to the scientific thing. You don't know what you don't know, and things change. Right.
And I want to make sure that she's constantly okay with where we are at as a couple, where I am at as a person, and that we remain okay. And thus
there
far,
been any negatives?
No, quite the opposite. There only seem to have been positive thus far. When you're finally able to admit who you are to yourself and to everyone around you, it's liberating. It allows you to just be a better human.
Right. And out of all of this to date, besides your internal battle, what's been the biggest challenge?
Family, but not in like the traditional transphobic or homophobic way. I've had a very supportive family. They're just worried for my safety, I would say.
In what regard? I mean, what have they communicated specifics?
No, not at all. I'm extrapolating. I'm extrapolating. So it's difficult because your parents want you to be safe.
Yeah.
And when you look at the LGBT plus community, there's a lot of hate crimes that occur there, and it's that gets sensationalized in the media.
Sure.
And when you don't live in California, and I live in I see it around me because I live here, but they don't live here, right? Mm-hmm. They live somewhere else, and so. All they have to work on is what they see in the media, and it's super sensationalized there.
Right.
And so, yeah, they're worried. So it comes from their fear comes from a place of love,
right?
If that makes sense.
It's protection and concern.
It's protection and concern.
Right.
But I'm in a place where I'm like, yeah, cool. I've spent half of my life as the wrong gender. I want to fix this now. This is not about the journey.
Right.
This is about the destination.
Yeah.
So I'm not slowing down. And like they would prefer it if I slowed down.
Was there any of that maybe they thought, maybe they're like, oh, you're going to change your mind, or this is one of the biggest things, because for anyone that's born into their correct gender, It's kind of like just being born with blonde hair. You're like, well, blonde hair. You know, it seems very laissez-faire, of course. But to someone who's trans, it is not that at all. And I think that's where there's a huge disconnect, because
I wish
it's a battle that you're not fighting, so you don't really know how to even communicate it or whatever. And that's a big purpose of this podcast, is to hopefully shed light for people that might be trans and are going through this in a very early stage, or already have. And, you know, I mean, there's just a bunch of, and as the whole world becomes more gender fluid around, and you've talked to younger people specifically, they have a lot less problem with all of it, because they're just like, yeah, this is how it is.
Yeah.
It's our generation and beyond that have all the hangups.
I feel like they have it figured out.
Yeah.
Like, and I'll be frank, I did not understand it until like it switched in my brain.
Right.
Like I just didn't get it. I didn't judge it. I just didn't understand it. So I don't know how to communicate that to someone who was in my position 1 year ago. Like I don't know how to communicate to someone of like, this is how it feels when your brain disagrees with your body. I don't know what words to use.
I'm not sure you can.
Yeah, I don't know how to relate that to anything else in life.
Right.
But there is like no doubt. There's not like, oh, maybe. No, I'm absolutely sure this is the case. And when you talk to and actually I could potentially ask you, because you've known me again for over a really long time. And since I came out and since you've seen me start to transition, people have said that I'm lighter.
Yeah.
I'm just happier.
Yep.
I'm, just like that kind of bucket of words.
Yep. Well, happiness is a big key to everything that goes on around you. I believe what you're vibrating, and if you're living your best life and you're happy, everything is in a much better status for you and everyone around you. And you may not, like you said, you had this bar of happiness, and now it's going to be raised, and it will continue to. I mean, it seems to be that way. And from my perspective, it certainly seems that way.
I think that bar of happiness is important, because I was not unhappy before.
But it's a level, and it can keep going, up.
And it does. And that's the slightly, for me, when I was trying to find answers online and I'm looking in the community, there are a lot of people who are not happy.
Right.
And I just did not relate to them. And I had a really hard time relating to what they were going through. And it's taken me actually a while to realize that everyone deals with this completely differently.
For as many trans people, there's as many stories.
There really are. And mine doesn't seem to match up with, and I was really worried. I thought, maybe I'm a fraud. Like, maybe this isn't it. Maybe this is just like,
imposter.
Exactly. I thought I am not, I don't have any of this weird, like, I'm not miserable. I'm not suicidal. I'm not unhappy. The people around me are loving and supportive. So maybe this is wrong. But
it doesn't have to be.
I just realized that, no, I'm really lucky.
You are. I think that's largely in part why I thought you'd be an excellent first guest, because you kind of, nothing's perfect 100% of the time, but you really do have kind of a great story, and the story is inspiring to others. And hopefully these are the types of stories that are more frequent than as time goes by. Not that there's anything wrong with the other stories, but I'm saying that hopefully it becomes easier, is what I'm trying to articulate, is that it's easier for people to have a similar experience where it's like, oh, this is just wrong, and we're just going to fix this, and now everything's great, and move on. Because that's really all it should be, let's face it. I mean, it is not that big of a deal. And, I look at things that you see and you read about these murders that are happening and stuff, and it's like caveman days. It's like, what's going on? People, like, it is not that big of a deal. And there's a bazillion other reasons for those types of media hype things. And I'm not discounting any of them, because it's incredibly tragic and sad. I'm not trying to discount that. But I believe in a world where we are well beyond that, and that those people are not in vain or anything like that. But it's like, it shouldn't be that thing. It should not be that way. It should not be that tragic.
I don't understand where that hatred comes from, because it doesn't impact them.
No.
Right? This impacts me and my circle of people that I'm around, and I am working with that circle of people closely to make sure that everyone is okay with all of this, and that we do this smartly, and it doesn't impact them. So why the hatred?
Right.
I don't understand that. I don't understand that on any regard.
It's not just trans, it's anything.
Yeah, exactly. Like
insert thing here.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like it's ridiculous.
That's just not how my brain works.
Yeah,
So,
mine either. And hopefully that's the future generation as well too, that just are not. It's like, why is this even a thing? It's like anything. It's like people used to do crazy stuff and you're like, I can't believe they did that way back then. Hopefully that's the story for future generations. Well, you mentioned community. Let's talk about community for a second, because you said you've done some research, you've kind of reached out, you're not fully ingratiated into what are your thoughts on that? Is it kind of thing is like, this is a thing for me, and are you interested in joining community and getting involved with more people that have similar stories, or is that just not important?
Everything changes, right? So at this exact moment in time, so to be clear, I don't view myself as my gender, right? So to me, this isn't something where I'm throwing it in people's faces and being like, you need to support me or whatever. This is just a thing that I'm going to go through. You should just be aware that I'm going to look funny for a couple of years as I transition from one to the other. I'll be awkward. I'm sorry. Deal with it. And by the way, I'm already awkward.
I was going to say, that's not different than any other day for those of you that don't know Jamie. It's
already awkward. Just
Ben
more,
to Jamie.
more awkward. Yeah.
More awkward.
So that's the extent of it for me. It's not about that for me right now. However, if I can help other people, I'm fine doing that. Like, so I don't want to discount that there's still challenges that are out there, and community can help those challenges. But I just haven't found the community that quite fits me just yet.
Right.
But I also haven't been searching very hard. So I will find it. There is a community.
It may unfold very naturally.
It may. It may. I mean, even maybe something just based on what you're doing right now. But I think for some people, trans becomes an identity, and that's not it for me.
Right.
For me, it's just fixing this thing that's broken in my brain, transitioning aligning my brain and my body, and then, yeah, cool. Then I continue my life and do great things in my life.
Right.
This isn't the end. This isn't like this huge milestone that I have to reach. It's a milestone along my journey of life. It just happens to be a bigger one. But to me, I don't make my entire identity around this, if that makes any sense.
It does. And
by the way, some people do, and that's okay.
Right.
Like, everyone's experiences are totally different. Some people do not have supportive families, and they need to take a different path than I am taking. And I think supporting everyone in the path that they need to take, as you said, to kind of become your best self.
Yeah.
We should strive for that. We should strive for a world where everyone's happy.
Yeah.
I don't see any problems with that. And so if someone's path is completely and totally different than mine, that's fine. Some people will have a similar path to me. That's fine too.
Yeah. And we have some future guests too that want to talk about the almighty pronouns, because pronouns seem to be a new thing. And I think your wife was showing me that on Lyft now you can choose your pronoun, and the companies are becoming aware of, this is a thing that we should address, which I think is excellent, because it's like, it's definitely a thing that you should want to, no matter who you are or what you are, or how you identify, you should be able to be respected and identified in a way that you see fit. And companies that do business with the public should be mindful of that. So I think that's a good example of kind of new regime stuff that's happening. And, whether it's a marketing thing or not, I would believe that they wouldn't even try that unless there was some heart behind that. And some, it may have even come from a slew of complaints. But to that end, some people are super touchy with the pronoun situation, and you're saying you're sort of doing this in a logical format, and you're like, it's going to take some time, and it's like, but some people just throw down a gauntlet and be like, if you don't say she, or if you don't use this, and some say they. What are your thoughts on the whole pronoun topic?
Well, I think, again, everyone's journey is different, right? So they are probably coming from a different place than I'm coming from. The place in which I'm coming from is I still look and present male right now, and so whatever pronouns you want to use with me is fine, because that's how I look, and I wouldn't expect you to just know to use a different pronoun. I don't think that's fair to you or to anyone else. It's not a thing that I think is worth getting into fights with people over, or throwing that. Like, I don't want to hang my hat on that one.
Right.
There will be a time in the not too distant future, I mean, it's going to take a couple of years, but there will be a time when I'm in skirts and, you know, clearly presenting as female and look female. You know, I'd prefer be called she at that point instead of he. It's probably gonna sting a little if someone calls me he.
Especially if they've been around, someone like myself has been around a long time. You should know better by now.
Kind of.
Catch up.
But at the same time, I'm the type of person who will probably laugh at it pretty heartily because it will be funny.
Yeah.
So that's my stance on it. But again, everyone's journey in that regard is different. And so if someone takes a different stance, their opinion shouldn't be discounted just because they have a different viewpoint. But for me, it's not a thing that matters to me. Like using Ben or Jamie, especially right now, you know, I wouldn't expect anyone to use Jamie. I will say, because I have to go to the electrologist because once your facial hair starts growing, and the only way to get rid of it is basically kill it. And the only way to do that is to electrocute your face, essentially.
Fun.
Fun. Yep. It's a load of fun. So if there's ever any doubt that I am committed to this,
I don't like shaving, that I just don't. That's not an option for you anymore.
It is.
I mean, it is. It won't be for long.
Oh man, it is terrible. So the great thing about the electrologist office is that they do this. Like they work with the transgender community. She's worked with the transgender community for decades, and so there was no question. It was, they always refer to me as Jamie. They refer to me as she. There was never anything, and that was the first place where I'd ever done that. And it brought a smile to my face.
Well, there you go. There's that happiness.
It was nice. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It really is about happiness. And it really did make me feel.
And that's just a small little something, but imagine that, you know, it's exponential because it's everywhere. Then this is one place, first office where you're being treated the way you would like to be. And just that little bit, imagine that everywhere. It just sort of validates what you're saying.
Yeah,
you know?
And that's why it's not a big deal to me, but I can totally see where it's a big deal to someone else. And also that might become a bigger deal to me down the road.
Right.
I'm very early in the transition right now. And so at this exact stage, I don't expect people to look at me and go, I mean, I haven't, you listen to my voice and just the timbre of my voice is male. And like, I'm going to have to go through voice training. I'm starting that process too. And to change all of these aspects. And it's actually, to me, it's a very exciting future. And so when I hear things like Jamie and she, it brings a smile to my face. And wouldn't you want to do that, to your point, to everyone on the planet?
All the time.
All the time. Like,
every day.
Like getting people happy and excited is just way better than getting them depressed and angry.
Or trying to keep them down.
To keep them down.
Everyone should flourish. There's plenty for all.
Yeah, there really is. And like, it's just a great moment. It just, yeah.
Well, and let me ask you this question. So as far as advice, you've done a lot of your homework. You've done these things. You've done research, and you were very meticulous about this prior to coming out. What advice or knowledge are you still seeking?
Everything medical. The medical side is constantly changing. It's getting better, but at a fairly slow rate.
And some of it opinion-based.
Most of it opinion-based. And actually, that's the tricky thing with... So when you're transgender, how do I word this tactfully? Just because you identify... Your gender is not your genitals. Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So there might be transgender women out there who decide that they don't want to go through bottom surgery. That doesn't make them less of a woman. It's your gender's not your genitals. So I want to do all of the surgery. That's who I am. And so when you're looking at these different surgeries, they're plastic surgeons. Like this is all different plastic surgery. And so it's half science and half art. And so it's half finding the right techniques, but then half, do I like this artist?
Right.
And that's really freaking hard because it's not just that artist, but then like my body is their canvas. Mm-hmm. That's scary.
And they've got lots of, you have to almost look at other work they've done to be like, yeah, okay.
Yep. And this is like a really personal decision, and it's really, the insurance company doesn't make it easy for you because they're like, we want to limit you to these options after you've done these things, and we will say when you're ready to go. And I'm like, yeah, how about no to none of that? And so it's a lot of like, okay, well, can I just do this without the insurance companies getting in my way? Like, who are the best in the world? it's a lot of data.
Right.
It's a lot of data to sift through.
Right.
And there's a lot of opinions too.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
and people's opinions aren't like, that's good data.
and it may be good for them and not for you. Whatever.
Yeah,
that is.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So that's, I think because I'm in California, I'm in Los Angeles area. So I'll say top surgery, that's easy.
Yeah.
Easily fixed.
It was
like they're a dime a dozen.
throw a rock. Yeah, there it is on the corner.
Yeah, exactly.
Right next to the dispensary.
Yeah. So the two big ones the two big ones are the bottom surgery and then facial feminization surgery. The
What does that entail?
Well, it's different for everyone, right? So
Sort of an assessment.
Yeah. So it's kind of, men and women have different kind of skeletal structures, just
Right.
facial features and everything else. And the hormones, the HRT, will move the fat around your body. That's actually an untrue statement. But they say fat redistribution, and they don't mean that. What they actually mean, what's happening is your male fat burns off because it gets used by the body. But the new fat that gets put on your body is put into female locations. So they say fat redistribution, but that's a stupid term because that's not what's actually happening. Anyhow, I sidebarred.
Burn and regain.
You're burning and regaining, but you're regaining in female locations.
Right.
And that will happen to your face. Your face will actually change its shape slightly from a non-skeletal standpoint, just from a fat standpoint. So
Right.
cheeks might move around, your eyes might kind of like get a little bit wider. I'm pointing as if they can see my face. But because my skeletal structure will never change, like that, the brow area kind of above my eye, that's more mannish because, currently biologically male right now. So what they can do is they can go in and they can basically, without getting too graphic, they go in and they can shave down bone in certain areas to feminize the face and to bring out female features. And, that's your face. Like, that's how other people first interact with you. Right.
Yeah.
The bottom surgery, that's for you. That's for
yours.
me. That's
Yeah.
me. No one's seen, like, that's mine. But the face, that's everyone, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so getting those two right is very important to me.
So you start up here and work your way down.
That's how most of it goes. For me,
Is that common for people? I guess it doesn't. There's probably no one way.
Common's a tricky word.
Yeah.
So due to insurance companies, the way it usually goes.
I think that's what I was driving at. Like,
yeah.
What
What they usually want you to do is they want you to, and again, it's all different for everyone, but what they usually want you to do is get on hormones first, and get on hormones for like at least a year, just to see how it all goes. And then actually present as the gender that you want to be. Because, I'm talking male to female because that's my experience, but there's female to male as well, right? So present as the gender that you want to be, ideally for another year or two. And then start looking at some of these more aggressive surgeries. And I'm like
a torturously long time.
Bingo. Right. So I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. So and usually they want to do the bottom surgery last. Yeah, right. And I'm like, I'm going to reverse all of this. I'm not going to do anything you say. Now, I'm obviously going to I'm going to listen to. I've got therapists and people that I lean on and talk to. But everyone's situation is different, and there are advantages to doing the bottom surgery first because you get rid of the thing generating the testosterone that gets in the way of the estrogen. So you can take blockers for that. That's part of the HRT. Like everyone's HRT is different, hormone replacement therapy. But if I can get rid of that part of it, then I can just let the estrogen do its thing. The thing is, once you get rid of that, you can't get that back.
Right.
So they want to be sure. They're like, you're not having kids after this happens. I'm like, cool, I wasn't having kids anyhow.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, that's more important. Like that's the thing. Now,
well,
I'm still very early on, so all of this might flip around. All of this might change. They're probably going to come back and be like, here are things you didn't consider. And I'll go, okay. But right now, at this exact moment in time, I actually want to do it reverse from how they recommend it. Do bottom surgery first. I'll probably, even after that, still present as male if I still look male. And then, because no one's going to know.
When you want.
Only I would know, right? And then once I'm ready, then I can do the face and the top.
Well, and other people may not have the access to all of those things either. Some people don't have health insurance. Some people that, I'm sure there's a large portion of people too that, are having to do these things maybe even over a longer period of time, or even through other methods. You hear about people going to other countries, third world countries, to have certain things done. I mean, that alone kind of shows you that the internal wiring is like something. Who's going to go to that length to do that?
Oh, I am.
I mean, anybody would, but
Yeah.
I'm saying to like, for those people that don't understand this, that it's so foreign to, or they think it's a choice or decision or somebody just wanting to be different or whatever, it's a misnomer for people that are stubborn or don't have the brain power to sort of process like everything that we've just talked about, and I guess, that's one of my last questions, is not that you have to deal with people that are, against that, but like, what advice would you give somebody that is just like the hatred person that is just not having it? Like what maybe, this is kind of putting you on the spot, but it's like, what would you say to that person, or that person who is just so vehemently against it?
I'll be frank, usually in those situations, I just walk away. Like, they're not worth. There are some people who have made up their mind, and there's absolutely nothing that you can say or do that will ever, ever change their mind. And that is not an argument that I feel is worth getting into. Neither side will ever win.
Right.
Like, there's no winning that. So I just don't engage. So I think that is a strategy that a lot of people need to take more often. Don't engage. But there are some people that's a level down from that, who simply don't understand but are willing to listen. Even if you crack that door open just a little bit, if they're willing to listen. And for those people, I would reiterate, this doesn't impact them. This is something for me.
It's not about you.
Yeah, exactly. And if they were born with an extra finger, actually, give me a second. There was a really great analogy. Okay. This doesn't quite work perfectly, but it was something along these lines. It was, 10 years ago, you hurt your arm, and it's been hurting ever since. And you didn't know that you could fix your arm. And then one day you go to the doctor, and the doctor goes, "Oh, no, I can totally fix that for you." Would you tell someone no, they can't fix their, like,
Right.
They're hurting. Like, they want, all they want is to feel
complete.
Yeah, they want their arm fixed. Why would you tell them no? That's kind of what it feels like.
Yeah.
But also what it feels like is that doctor says, "Oh, I can fix that for you." And then you go, "Yes, please do that." And they go, "Great. I can get you in 3 years." It's like, cool.
I need you to make sure you really don't.
Yeah, I need to make sure.
Pain.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, why did you
Great.
even tell me?
Yeah. Thanks.
Just tell me in 3 years. Yeah, exactly.
Thanks for teasing me.
But that's what it's like. And so not only am I sitting here waiting for this to occur and just waiting for this to be done, I don't want to be awkward any more than you want me to be awkward, right? I mean, I don't want that either. But now, I have to wait through all of this, and then I've got people going, "Well, you're a terrible human being. Why are you doing this?" Like, they're not helping. They're not helping.
And I mean, it's uninformed, and it's old school stuff that needs to die off for sure.
It will,
and it will. And it's really, I think why I asked that was not so much about like what's your witty retort to people that are against you. That wasn't really what I meant. But it's like, I think the second part, what you said, where there's that little glimmer of hope, because what we really are trying to do is leave breadcrumbs for people to follow the rest of us that are better, have spent the time working on yourself to be more accepting of others and differences and things like that, regardless of what they are, whether it's transgender or this, or there's a bazillion other things that can make, and we're all different. I mean, that's a fact. Like, there's not one person that's exactly the same, not even twins.
That's what makes it exciting.
And that's what makes it exciting.
How boring would it be if we're all the same?
Right. And how boring would it be if all you could just be is like, "You suck." That's just that's not, I empathize with those people because I'm like, "Oh, you poor dear, you're a little underdeveloped," and it's like, so come with us where you actually spend some time. And anybody that just listened to this has spent, whether they're for it, against it, or trans or not trans, hopefully got something from this, to even if one little bit, and there's people that are going to agree with stuff and disagree with stuff. Of course, that's natural. But, it is something to hopefully, and you should be acknowledged and, a little accolade there for being so strong, because not everybody has that strength. And you did, and it's scary, yes, and maybe clunky and clumsy, yeah. How could it not be?
Oh, yeah. Well, but I mean, you just described me, clunky and clumsy.
But no,
and scary.
I really appreciate it. And I think that this being like the first episode is the perfect first episode. And I appreciate you coming in, sharing this story. And obviously, we've got to have you back in a year.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
There's got to be a follow-up. We're going to get you committed to it right now.
Yeah. Okay. No, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Like, hopefully my voice will have changed by then. Like, I'll have trained my voice to do better. I'm sure my physical appearance will change. I'll hopefully be done electrocuting my face by then.
I'm excited. I think it's great. And as your friend, like I said in the text, I fully support. Support you and others and anybody else and anyone else. You can feel free to contact us or and reach out if you're struggling or if you just even want to communicate. Go ahead and send us an email, which you can find. We'll throw that in the tag. And again, is there anything else you want to add before we conclude?
No, I think this is great.
Awesome.
I think what you're doing is just fantastic.
Awesome.
And
Well,
I think I'm hoping that certainly you're focusing on transgender right now, but there's a whole world of other stuff out there too, and I'm hopeful that you'll
we'll get there
someday. Oh yeah,
we'll get there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, season 1 is all about my personal relationships with people that I know are within a degree of in my own life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to do like as many stories as and so far everybody's a resounding hell yes, which is great. And I appreciate everyone because it's through us all getting together to do these things and sharing these stories that hopefully we make the right impact or a positive impact. I think that's what we're going for.
I want you to create a transcript of this that we can go through in 1 year when you bring me back.
Okay.
And so that we can compare where I was then and like what I thought was going to happen versus where I'm at. I think that would be really incredible.
I think that's a great idea.
Because I'm only, I'm not very far into this, and already it's just this winding road of like back and forth of like, we're going to go this way. No, we're going to go this way. So yeah, I think that'll be fun.
It's down.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you again, Jamie. And please come back and visit us on episode 2, which will be next week. Special thanks to Vigilante and Goon for the track Likeable, which is out on Subtractive Records this summer 2019. Go check out Likeable. Thanks for listening to this episode of Trans Story. Be sure to check back for our future episodes. They'll be posted weekly. If you'd like to send us an email, just send us an email at podcast@subtractive.net. Trans Story was recorded at Subtractive Inc. in Santa Monica, California. Copyright 2019.